Simple present is one of the 12 verb tenses that you have to learn throughout the process of learning English. In this case, we are going to remember a couple of auxiliaries that are very important when you have to use sentences. Okay? So from now on, every time I say simple present auxiliaries, you're going to think of do and does. Okay. Remember, the auxiliaries that are helpful for simple present are only do and does. What is the sentence structure that you have to follow when you try to make a sentence? You always need a subject. That is the very first thing you have to think of. You have to think of the subject. Now, important. The subject may be all the personal pronouns that you already know, like I, you, she, he, it, plural you, we, and they. Or not like the personal pronouns, but they can actually be real names. Carlos, Maria Jose, Sebastián, the house, my work, the weather, Pedro and Alfonso. You can think of real names and places as subjects. Now, you have to be very careful when it comes to using real names because those words are easily confused and sometimes you will not easily remember when you have a third person singular. When your subjects are she, he, or it. For those three subjects, we will have an exception. We will have a plural s, okay? We will have an s into the verb that does not mean a plural. I repeat. For the third person singular, she, he, and it, we will have an s into the verb, and it does not mean under no circumstance it's a plural, okay? Let's see some examples. After having these subjects here, we are going to use a verb. What type of verb? This can be any verb from your list or any verb you want to express in present with the conditions that it cannot have any ending. So it means no ing ending, no ed ending. It has to be a regular verb like walk, sing, jump, okay? Any verb. Mhm. And then you're going to think of the complement. Now, the complement is very special because you're going to give more information into your sentence. So you're going to be using words such as in the garden. Maria Jose is, no, not is, Maria Jose jumps in the garden. That would be the complement of that sentence. Now, I want you to notice something I said. I said, Maria Jose. What is the personal pronoun of Maria Jose? Maria Jose is a she, right? So I say, Maria Jose jumps. Did you hear the S? Maria Jose jumps in the garden. Because Maria Jose is a she, I am going to include an S, right? Now, on the other part, we are going to remember these little detail, okay? The third person, she, he, and it, will require the word s into the verb. Very important. But just like I put here, it does not mean under no circumstance that we are using a plural. It's just one of the conditions. In Spanish, we have to conjugate all the verbs. For example, it's not the same to say, yo corro, usted corre. The ending of the verbs change. In English, it's very simple because they do not change. It's very straightforward. All the verb remains the same when we're talking about simple present. But the only condition they ask is that you use the word s at the end of the verb. Okay? Now, let's see some examples. Mhm. When we are talking about the positive sentence, we can talk about we work hard. This is a positive sentence in simple present. We have subject, verb, and complement. Okay, let's see another example. She works hard. Same exact exercise. The only exception is the word S. Okay, now I am using this S because this is a she. And as if you remember, whenever we have a she, a he, or an it, we need to add the word S into the verb. But that does not mean that we are having a plural. It's not a plural. She is just one person. Now, in this, I cannot emphasize enough that you have to be very careful when using the subject, when selecting the subject, because sometimes is as easy as we or she or it or we, but sometimes it is more complicated to identify the subject because you can read the weather and the weather. Who can tell me what personal pronoun substitutes the weather? Is it a she? Is the weather a he? No, the weather is an it. Okay? So the weather being an it means that you have to put an S into the verb. Therefore, if the word is the weather, then I need to put an S like the weather strikes hard this weekend. And I'm putting an S because the weather is an it. Okay? Now, here where it says negative sentences, we are going to start elaborating sentences using the auxiliaries that I emphasized in this one. Remember, when I say auxiliaries, you have to think of do and does. Now, these two only work for simple present. Each and every verb tense has its own auxiliaries. And if you have the verb to be present, you do not need assistance from any auxiliary. So the negative sentences will be as follow. If the positive is we work hard, the negative will be we do not work hard. This is the way you deny, this is the way you make it negative. We do not work hard. Okay? If the positive sentence is she works hard, the negative one will be she does not work hard. Now you can remember that all those auxiliaries with negative forms can also be contracted. You can say do not, or you can say don't. You can say does not, or you can say doesn't. Now, very important also is to remember that whenever you are writing something, now pay attention to this part. Whenever you are writing something and you have to write a sentence portion, then you have to write it down separately. Okay? Do not, does not. But whenever you are speaking, you can totally contract it. Okay? I repeat. When you are writing down, you have to write it down separately. But when you are speaking, you can contract it. Okay? You have to remember that. Now, how do I make a question? How do I make a question? Well, very simple. With the help of the auxiliaries that we just saw that are do and does, with those you just have to put it at the beginning of the sentence, and that way you will have your very own question just by putting it at the beginning. So if the positive sentence was we work hard, the question is do we work hard? And all you have to do is emphasize at the end of the sentence and put the auxiliary first, and that will help you do it all by yourself. Okay? I repeat. Do we work hard? Okay? Just by doing that, you'll know you are creating a question. What about the she? Remember the positive sentence was she works hard. How do you make that a question? You just have to put does. Does she work hard? And just like that, you created a question of your very own. Okay. Now, very important, you have to remember this. How do I answer to those questions? If you ask with do, you respond with do. If you ask with does, you respond with does. For example, do we work hard? The answer is yes, we do. Or no, we don't. Okay? If you have to ask, does she work hard? The answer is yes, she does, or no, she doesn't. Okay? Very careful with those two. Now, the goals, we're going to take a look into these sentences and I want you to repeat them after me. Okay? First, I am going to read it and then you read it by yourself. We finish homework early this week. He gains more confidence in public speaking. He gains more confidence in public speaking. Number 3. Carla keeps her locker clean and organized. Carla keeps her locker clean and organized. And number 4, our overall test average increases by 5 points. Now you have to be careful when repeating these because some of them start with an S, and in Spanish it's sometimes difficult to pronounce words that only start with an S. Because in Spanish, no word starts with an S, they all start with ES. So you tend to say ES, but don't. Just use the S, okay? Repeat after me. Number 1. We finish homework early each week. We finish homework early each week. Good. Number 2. He gains more confidence in public speaking. He gains more confidence in public speaking. Carla keeps her locker clean and organized. Carla keeps her locker clean and organized. Number 4. Our overall test average increases by 5 points. Now, in this one, what do you think is the subject? In number 4, remember I told you it is very important to know how to identify the subject? Okay. If I ask you, where is the verb in number 1? We finish, it's finish. Subject, verb. Number 2, he gains. Subject, verb. And because the subject is a he, you put an S to the verb. Number 3, Carla keeps. Subject, verb, right? But look at number 4. Our overall test average. And guess what? None of these 4 words is the verb. Our overall test average. This is not the verb. All these 4 words are just the subject. Our overall test average, which means there was a test, there were some scores, and the average of all those scores increased by 5 points. This is the subject, our overall test average. All this is the subject. So if all these words are the subject, what is the personal pronoun that substitutes this? Is this an I, an you, a she, he? This is an it. Our overall test average is an it. And because it is an it, the verb requires an S. Okay? These is the verb. Increases by 5 points. That is why I am telling you to be extra careful when you have to identify the subjects because sometimes sometimes you have compound subjects, and therefore you have to be very careful when identifying who is the subject to think of the possibility of having an S into the verb. Last but not least, we have these little small chalkboard that I put here. I love the chalkboards. Not to use them, but to represent them in pictures. We're going to remember the last thing, the last details of this video so that you can practice simple present on your own. The use of auxiliaries are I, you, we, and they. These four subjects, these four personal pronouns use the auxiliary do. And these other three subjects, she, he, and it, use the auxiliary does. Okay, very important. Now, the last part of the video is the sentence structure that you have to remember. Subject plus verb plus complement. That is the structure of the sentence. Whenever you want to make a sentence in simple present, all you have to do is follow this structure and say, we work hard. And just like that, I want you to work very hard on learning how to use the simple present. Thank you.